oftentimes parents tend to prescribe the career path or the subjects that their children should be selecting in school, and you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be an engineer. And oftentimes parents leave very little space for the child's ingenuity and the child's wishes and the child's, personal drive and personal ambition. So Claudia, have you entered such conversations where, you meet the parent who's very sure that they gave birth to an engineer, and they won't accept they won't accept that perhaps their child, might be interested in something else? So if you have entered such a conversation, what is it like, and what do you tell these parents?
I find it very interesting. Every time Dando has to speak or I'm exhibiting his books, young people will approach me and say, I want to be a soccer star, and my mom wants me to become an engineer. What do you think I should say to her? And sometimes parents are there present, and they will say, but you never told me that you want to be a soccer star. Why is it easy for her to know? And I think for me is because my own parents wanted me to become a doctor. Little did they know that I've selected accounting, and I wanted to be an accountant. I believe everyone comes with a special gift. And I always say, if we force our kids not to be themselves, then we make them live a banana kind of life. But if we support them on who they are, then they will never struggle in life. Because if you look at your life today, by being who you were born to be, it's much easier than to be something else.
And you've talked about gifts, right? That, you believe that children or individuals are endowed with gifts or talents, that are inherent to them. Would you say that there are also skills that need to be learned, that need to be, acquired through work and education, etc.? And what do you think those are? And how do parents equip themselves to equip their children with these entrepreneurial or, skills of ambition?
I think, yes, definitely. There are lots of skills to be learned, which is why it's always important to focus on your strengths first. Because if you know who you are, it's easy for you to identify your weaknesses. And some of those skills, then, they show themselves up as weaknesses. And I think one big skill today is self-development. I have learned in my life journey that if you don't develop yourself, no one will. And people go to school thinking that school is enough, or go to university and think that university is enough. Most of the things that I have learned personally, I've learned out of school, I've learned out of university. So I think parents, if they could help their kids, one first that is coming to me is self-confidence. If your kids have self-confidence, no one can tell them otherwise. Sometimes kids at Ntando school, they say he's arrogant, because if he doesn't believe in something, he's not going to do it to please you. So it's important, because when you have self-confidence, you have self-love. And when you have self-love, you choose what you take and what you bring in. So you will not be affected by peer pressure or choose wrong role models, as we see what is happening with our national television. And another skill that comes to mind is resilience. Ntando will tell you it has not been easy. Most of customers who come back to him is because he spoke for free. So if kids know you have to give in order to get, it's not like as an entrepreneur it's easy, you have written this book and all the money is going to come. So if kids build resilience, then they know whether it takes me 5 years to sell 10 books, I am still going to live this kind of life I want to live, because this is who I am. I want to extend and share myself with the world.
Ntando, do you want to speak for yourself about kind of the very difficult skills that you've had to learn by yourself about being a young entrepreneur, and maybe what separates you from your peers at school? Because I'm sure there's a difference, from someone who, a student or a child who has their own venture, has their own business, is doing something, as opposed to someone who goes to school, goes back home, comes to school, goes back home. So what do you think would be the hard skills that you've had to learn that have separated you from your peers?
I think one of the hardest ones is time management, because when you're going to school and coming back, the only time that is managed for you is that time when you wake up and the time you come back from school. All the time in between, you can do more or less whatever you want, except for homework. But now, if you run a venture, you have school, you have homework, and then you have work on top of that. And you know you have to wake up earlier because you have to get to school on time. So time management's one of those. The second thing is admin. If you ask my mom, I'm terrible at admin. She's very good at admin. So that's one thing that we complement each other on. So me learning admin, learning how to submit emails and stuff like that. The thing is, it's not that I don't know how to, it's that I hated writing emails so much. So when I was forced to say now you need to talk to your customers, you need to email them back, that's another thing I learned. And I think one last thing that I learned in terms of a skill is being able to identify with other people. You know, empathy is a very important skill when it comes to entrepreneurship, because you're not just selling people a product that they're going to take. You know, people have emotions, people have something that they expect from you. You need to have a personal connection with people. You need to have rapport with people. And I think me being able to learn that is what made me being able to get more customers, more people who are saying, you know, Ntando, we're interested in your story and would like you to come tell it.
And now your mom spoke about you being viewed sometimes as an arrogant person at school. And I want you to touch a bit more about kind of what your relationship maybe with your educational institution has changed to, now that they know, you know, that you have a bit more agency than, you know, oftentimes they would like you to have, actually. And even with your peers, has being an entrepreneur changed relationships, changed friendships, changed the way your peers view you, and what impact do you think that has had on your life?
I think when anyone becomes an entrepreneur, I think unfortunately you need to lower the amount of friends, the amount of best friends you have. You can't just have, not everyone who enters your circle is worth entering into your circle. Because I've gotten people when my businesses started working and I started having interviews inside the school and whatnot, people started coming, but then when they come, they ask for money or they ask for certain things, right? So I've learned to lower my circle of friends. My relationship with my peers, some of them are proud of me, some of them are a bit more jealous, you know. Those are things you have to deal with in life, you know. It's not an easy road. But with my educators, it's a love-hate relationship. I mean, it's a love relationship because they're really proud of me and what I do. But you know, when I need to go to a speaking event on a weekday, when I have school, that's the love relationship. It kind of goes sour now because tomorrow I need to catch up, or maybe I wasn't able to do homework because of this or that. So it's a love-hate relationship with them. But I learned to deal with it because, you know, when you enter into entrepreneurship, you can't expect everything to be rosy. You know, your life will change because now your mindset has changed.
So it sounds to me that you're kind of juggling two personas, so to speak. You know, you are the student, you are a 17-year-old boy, but you're also an entrepreneur. You are a young businessman, right? What is that like, having to juggle two personas? How do you consolidate the two? How do you switch between, okay, now I'm a 17-year-old boy, now I'm a businessman? You know, what does that actually look like?
When it comes to that, you'll have your speaker mode when you're going into conferences and you deal with people in a certain way. Like here, I can't go around acting like a friend to peers here. I need to be professional, but professional in a certain type of way. As I said, the rapport still needs to be there. So I still need to show a bit more of my humanity. Funnily enough, I share more of my humanity on stage than I do at school, because at school they already know me, you know. So all of my characteristics kind of come out at school. So when I'm at school and I'm a 17-year-old boy, I do have to engage in small talk, no matter how much I hate it. You know, when people are talking about cars or football matches, I have to talk about that. When the teacher's talking about the next topic, I need to discuss that. You know, I need to be a normal person. You know, nothing must have changed. But unfortunately, when a change like that happens, that change is always going to be visible wherever you go. So sometimes I do enter speaker mode in class, because before I became an entrepreneur, I used to deal with things in a certain way. Now I deal with them in a more responsive way. We need to find results. We need to get this done. So I expect more of my peers when we're doing projects. So that time where you slack around, that's no longer there anymore.
Claudia, I want to ask you the same question I've asked Ntando, but framed differently, right? How do you raise a child with an alter ego, with, the entrepreneur, still my son, still a young boy, still a 17-year-old, still needs to experience what, 17-year-olds are experiencing, but also has this other persona, this other life that they're exploring. How do you raise such a person?
Sure. I think Ntando has raised the bar in a sense that I also have to be quick, I have to be sharp, I have to learn. So it has kind of added more positive things in my life in a sense that I read more now because I know my answer might not be just easily accepted. It's amazing. I used to be a very tough parent as a career woman. Now that has changed. I'm more warm. I have more time because now my career is no longer an 8 to 5. I'm at home. I have time to listen to him. So I would say because when you have a special child, you have to remain humble. So for me, I am more aware of how I behave. I'm more aware of what I do. I'm not forceful. There are times where a no is a no, yes. But I think most of the time, it's more of a conversation. So we have conversations, we have disagreements, and I think what is important for me is I ensure that I instill the right values.
But anyway, continuing with that, so Claudia, can you tell us about the work that you do, right? And like the work that you're doing now, is it in support of Ntando? Are you running your own venture, or have you kind of combined forces?
Okay, currently I run my own company. It's called Teen Talk and Expo. In that company, I support young teenagers to start their own companies. I help them with leadership skills, entrepreneurship skills, and speaking skills. Those are 3 things that are very close to my heart, and I think having raised a dynamic kid like Ntando has also assisted me to have my own prototype of how I can assist other parents and also assist other teenagers. So he runs his own independent company, but I'm his manager, and I run the company on his behalf as he's still doing grade 11.
Right. And Ntando, can you tell us about your company and how you run it as a grade 11 student?
My company, basically, it's the company that sells books, and I also do public speaking. So when people invite me to do speaking, that's another thing that I sell in my businesses. More projects will be up and coming soon because we believe that growth is always possible. As a grade 11, I mean, it gets more difficult as the years go by because if you know, they say grade 11 is more difficult than matric because in matric, you spend 6 months studying for a test, whereas in grade 11, you don't have that time. So it is sometimes a hassle. Sometimes you need to manage your time, but I'm learning as time goes by, and I don't regret having started my journey.
Right, and you know how as young children, maybe some adults can still relate to this up till this day, we are always kind of throwing this question around, what do I want to be when I grow up? I want to be a doctor, engineer, etc. At what point did you decide that entrepreneurship was the career path that you wanted to take? And do you think that in the next 10 years, 20 years, it's still going to be that thing?
So when I was 11, my mom took me to a business seminar where I learned about business and how I can change other people's lives through business, not just making money. So that made me convinced that entrepreneurship was the best way for me to go. I wanted to do it for university, but my mom said, no, we have enough entrepreneurs in university. We have enough degrees of that. So I decided to do that. I'm going to do science when I go to university. But 10 to 20 years from now, I think it will still be viable. It probably won't look the same as it does now. I'll probably get into more business. But I think entrepreneurship is a journey that's going to go with me for the rest of my life.
And you've mentioned something really interesting about, your mom still is your mom and she plays a certain, advisory role in your life. What does that feel like, still having to take instructions from your mom when you feel like, no, I kind of want to do my own thing now?
I mean, it's easier now because I spend more and more time with her. I get to understand why she has the opinion she does, why she does the things that she does. So it's important to, now more than ever, it's important to take those lessons. I believe now that I am going out there into the world with her, she has experience of being out there in the world, being thrust on your own and having to survive on your own. So now that she's there, I take more and more instructions from her because she's got more experience than I do.
Right. So, Ntando, you describe yourself as the dynamic kid, right? And am I right in saying you're the firstborn in your family? How many siblings do you have?
So I have 2 brothers.
Right, and they're both younger than you.
Yes.
So I want to find out what role, or does it play a role at all that you're the firstborn in your family and you being this dynamic entrepreneurial child?
I think to an extent it does because of, especially since you are the firstborn, there are things that are like required of you to do. You need to take care of your brothers when your parents aren't around. So because I took up that role very early on in my life, one of my younger brothers is only 2 years younger than me. So you can see the time frame is very short between his birth and my birth and his. So it's helped me acquire leadership roles more easily. But I believe no matter what, whether you're firstborn, middleborn, or lastborn, you can always take that opportunity to grow because, for example, in my mother's case, she wasn't the firstborn, but she still took up leadership roles in the house.
Right. So, Claudia, being Tando's mother, you can see kind of his trajectory, literally, from when he escaped the womb to who he is now, a 17-year-old young man. Can you track or identify any changes in his behavior or cognition or, whatever, any changes that have occurred since he's become a young entrepreneur?
Yes, I have. I realized that when you're an entrepreneur, you actually spend more time thinking about what's next. What's the big thing that I can do next? So Ntando's hunger for being a better person than he is today has made him to achieve what he has achieved today. So he's more focused, he plays less. Even though young people of his age spend time out there, he is not moved by that. And I think for me, it's something that is very interesting that at his young age, he's able to tell, this is what I want for my life today, so I can delay other things. So he has what you call delayed gratification. He doesn't do things to be happy today. Something very strange and something that I've learned from him, Ntando does 10-year plan of his life. So already he knows when he's 27 what will be happening in his life. And something that I think for me it's a lesson and it's something that is great because he is not focused on what is around him today.
And so you've talked about some really positive traits that I would like to congratulate you, Ntando, for being such an ambitious, driven young person. Claudia, do you think that you view Ntando differently now because of that? Are there, when you're in your own social groups and you're with your friends, has anything changed about the way you speak about your son?
Not really. I think for me, what has changed is how I support other parents to actually do the same and how I challenge other parents to do the same. So if we have conversation, it's not to boast, but to say, do you give your own children time such that you can help them to identify their own gifts, harness and support them whilst they are still young. So I think for me is to push the movement of young entrepreneurship as much as possible because that's what our country and the world needs.
A round of applause for Claudia and Ntando. Your story is phenomenal, and it has, I'm sure, inspired the audience as it has inspired me. Please continue to inspire and to teach and to grow.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.